Ms. Casabon.
Our table talked about how we kind of go straight to punishment sometimes because we often assume they already know how, or they should know how to behave.
Thank you. That is like my favorite answer to that question, because what my mind always comes to. We all assume that because they're in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade that they should know it. Even when we have taught it before, we assume that they should know it because of that when maybe we haven't revisited. So after my introduction, I'm going to share with you a little bit of data on our current situation at Pasco Middle. We're going to talk about office versus teacher managed behaviors, which is something we have shared with you in the past, but we wanted to revisit it. We're going to talk about our pride and our expectations, and how do we teach those expectations after we have sometimes assumed that they know it. How do we explicitly go into that? Also, our reward systems that we have in place to go along with our pride expectations, our MTSX structure, and our problem-solving supports and SITs. Just when we want to give up on a particular kid, we have to come back to this notion of I have to find how to tap into that kid's potential and exploit it. To find undesirable behaviors, and we expect them to stop because of some kind of punishment. Right? You write the referral, the kids come to the office, I get mad, I yell at them, that doesn't work. I send the kid back to your class after a suspension, and then the behavior happens again. So we learned that the punishment doesn't really stop that undesirable behavior. To find undesirable behaviors, and we expect them to stop because of some kind of punishment. Right? You write the referral, the kids come to the office, I get mad, I yell at them, that doesn't work. I send the kid back to your class after a suspension, and then the behavior happens again. So we learned that the punishment doesn't really stop that undesirable behavior. Through PBIS, we look for altering the environment and looking for the antecedents that are causing the problem to try to minimize them. And we, like we were saying earlier, try to go back to teaching the appropriate skill. Rewarding good behavior, which is why the pirate bucks and the gold coins are such an integral part of our system, and systematically using data to identify those supports. That's what we're doing in our SITs. We're using conversation to create interactions in SDS, which create data that we then can bring to our joint SIT, and Ms. Henson will speak on that a little bit later. We saw a big decrease in our discipline referrals from 2 years ago to last year. Unfortunately, that trend did not continue into this year. For Q1 of last year, we had 94 referrals. For Q1 of this year, 132. For Q2 of last year, we had 163 referrals. And for Q2 of this year, we're already at 228 with another week to go. And that's the data that you see represented on the left-hand side. And that is not because of a lack of hard work on anybody's part. It's not for a lack of intervention, but it's our reality. And so we have to, hopefully, we'll get to the point where when we're talking about the SITs, you realize that as we continue to support these interventions, we'll hope to reverse that trend and come back to where we were, the progress we were making last year. Come back to your table mates and talk for a minute about things that you think, that you can think of off the top of your head that will help us reverse that increase.
We have them by grade level as well?
By grade level, I can tell you that 7th grade is at more than double the rate that 6th grade and 8th grade. 9th grade was, or 6th grade was currently at about 90, 7th grade at 220, and 8th grade at like 110.
Well, that might be like a stop that as a negative.
But we still.
That.
Well, just one question. How much, and I don't know if we've ever thought about this, but how much of that could be staff turnaround too? Because you establish an environment with people, and we have the way we do things, and then we lose let's say 10, 13 people. Now a whole new crew comes in and they have a different way of doing things. They don't really know how we do it here yet. Because we don't change, we do what we do. And they gotta get with us. But how much do you think of that could be a factor with these kids? Because building a relationship with those kids, and even though I teach 6th grade, I have relationships with 7th and 8th graders. And like Mr. Cancel has relationships with kids outside of his grade. So how much of that do you think could be another factor? Is that something we thought about?
Somebody give this man a ticket, please. So that's most definitely a big part of our current reality. It's the reason why we wanted to record this, so that as new staff members come in, we're about to get into the meat of the business for today.
Gotcha.
That they have some materials they can reference to learn our way, our prior expectations.
We all have to be willing to change though. So we
Yeah.
can't just have
Oh,
our
well,
way and stick to
So our
it
new
forever.
people, but this is how everything starts. I say all the time, regardless of what the issues we're talking about, Ms. Dufresne, Ms. Wolf, and I, we can't do most of this stuff by ourselves.
Right.
So it comes back to our teacher leaders owning a piece of it and then sharing with their peers. I say that to Ms. Novak and Ms. Herndon all the time. When they come to me with a new idea, I say, well, let's share it with our other people, and then it grows from there. So the fact that you guys are here makes me encouraged, and as long as we own it, then we can start building it from there.
I feel that as adults, we have to look at ourselves a lot. I'm still fighting the cold. Whenever we feel bad, we're a lot shorter with the students, but sometimes we don't realize it. And sometimes we have to realize a little bit on that part. But before we give everybody a big hug, I just think that sometimes whenever somebody's having a bad day or something, you just need to think about some parts that if all of a sudden you're getting short and calling and yelling and so on, that a good time to take back. Sometimes the teacher can reflect and real quick fix it before second or third period comes around. But sometimes we don't look in the mirror itself. And I'm not saying we're the problem, it's just what can we do?
But our
What's one area?
reaction to the situation changes based on how we feel.
Right.
Just right before coming in here, Mr. Friend and I were speaking with a kid whose dad is in detention in Jacksonville, who's gonna be getting deported. And so that child's reality is gonna take him away significantly from what we want him to do. And without us finding a way to make a connection, he's not gonna care whatever you're trying to teach him. You know? Now, they don't always willingly share that information, so it falls on us, the support services team, or the administrators, to share as quickly as we can that information with you guys, so you can take it into consideration when you're making your approach with the kid.
But I agree with what Mr. Flannery said. I wanted to add, I like to do a 24-hour kind of process where I look back before I write a referral, see if it was me. And then I like to contact with the kid the next day. Maybe it was them, like you said. Maybe they just had something really stressful going on in their life that day, so they weren't going to respond well that day. But if you give time for you to cool off, the kid will cool off, maybe.
And sometimes I do have to reconsider what I'm about to say to the kid based on the relationship I have with the child and whatnot. And I will let a referral sit in that inbox one extra day to think about how I'm going to approach it once
And I think they'll react
use
differently too if you give them that respect.
Mhm.
And to apologize the next day, because sometimes I do overreact. I go back and I apologize the next day. Conference, I go, you know what, Ms. Watson really overreacted to your situation. Please let me apologize. And I think they kind of respect it a little bit more for that. So.
have a consensus and say, you know what, we're not going to fight it anymore, we're going to do this. And I will say that for the majority of the classrooms I've been into, I have seen teachers supporting the pirate buck process. But we have to have a consensus to do it, which builds our infrastructure and that supports the implementation of the program that we are all working so hard to put in place. That is what starts to build our culture of positivity, which then in turn, through implementation, comes back to increase and improve the climate of our school. That climate that makes it feel like we're the pirate family, that makes it feel like a place where you want to come to work, that makes it feel like a place where people have your back. These are the kinds of systems that build that infrastructure for. I say that lightly, but the data does support that this works. It's ultimately should create an environment that's conducive to learning because we're promoting positivity and the kids buy into it and they engage with what you're doing. collaborative, assessment-based, proactive. But the proactive piece is real big in this. It's gonna come back to so many pieces, like we were saying, like teaching expectations. You have to be proactive in teaching your expectations. I walk into a lot of classrooms where I see there are rules posted in a corner, like of the wall, where nobody ever talks about it, the kids don't ever look at it, so it's awesome that you have it posted, but if it never comes up in conversation, if a kid doesn't follow through with the rule that you have in place and you see it posted and it's never being referenced, then we're missing opportunities.
First question you ask yourself when there is an undesirable behavior going on in your class is this incident office managed? Yes or no? If it is, if your answer is no, then you go to the right and you follow the steps. The first step being you give the student a verbal warning and you reteach the expectations. Sometimes we are really good at giving them the verbal warning or the verbal prompt to discontinue a behavior, but we don't follow through with teaching what the desired behavior would be. So that would be step one. If the behaviors continue, you would move on to step two, which there are examples for things that you can do for step two, giving the student a short timeout or a time to chill out. A meaningful assignment, we had sent around a reflection assignment if a student was sent to a timeout area in your room or to another teacher's classroom where they could reflect on their behavior. Changing their seat, possibly they need just to move to the other side of the classroom to get it away from a peer, and calling home to express your concerns in a positive way and ask for the parents' assistance in helping us to correct the behaviors. Step three, you could give a lunch detention or an after-school detention. We have after-school detention every Wednesday in the cafeteria. Step four, have a parent-teacher conference. I think it's very beneficial to have the students involved in those parent-teacher conferences because we're talking about them and their behavior and their education, so they need to be a part of that process. Step five, if all of the above hasn't improved the behavior or stopped the behavior altogether, then writing a referral and following the information on the other side of the paper. And as you see, if the behavior ceases, you stop at whichever step the behavior ends at or improves at.
Proactively thinking, what can I do to encourage the behavior that I want to see in them?
Speaking of that, I can say with these pirate bucks, within the first 3 minutes, if I see students come in, get their planner out, start writing in it, looking at what they're supposed to be doing on the board, I start handing out pirate bucks. And I can tell you these kids are coming in, they're not asking to go to the bathroom as much as they did anymore because they know if they're in the bathroom, they don't get a pirate buck. They come in, they sit down, they start working. So I can say pirate bucks are really
Excellent, and that is a proactive action on your part to try to do something about the problem. Thank you, Ms. Watson.
Too is, if this was, was this a first-time event for her to come to your class late that way or late at all? I think when we look at education with exceptional students or with anything that we do, we're looking at the least restrictive type of environment. So if it was like the first time, I would just have a little conversation and a little, warning. If it's the second time, then I may pick it up and call home and say.
It was.
I would still document it though.
Yeah.
Right, still document it, absolutely. I
And it
would
wasn't the
not,
first
yeah.
time, and there's like this group of girls.
There's a cartoon up here, and I'm hoping that it does not look familiar to people, but I'm sure that it does look familiar to a lot of you. No gum chewing, no running, no jumping. So everything's stated really negatively, and there's probably, 30 rules or more up there. So that's what we're trying to avoid with our pirate code. So, as I guess most of you know this, because most of you have been here. If not, you've probably seen our pirate. He's over there on the wall. He's here. He should be posted in everybody's room. So what we've done is we've taken all these 30 or 50 rules and tried to combine them into 5. If you noticed, if you watch the announcements, every day on the morning announcements, the students are doing a different letter of the pride expectations. And they're not only giving examples, but also non-examples so the kids know what they are. It is time to change students because the same ones have been on for a while. But at that time, that would be a good time for you people to maybe, after announcements, stop and explain how that looks in your classroom, just to reinforce it. The other good news is Pasco Elementary, one of our feeder schools, has adopted our Pride expectations. So all of our feeder schools have expectations, but theirs are the same as ours. So hopefully next year with those kids coming in, it'll be a lot easier for us.
So I'm going to go specifically into all the areas that we expect the kids to exhibit the Pride expectations. So classroom, cafeteria, passing. You have one activity. Before I get into that activity, I wanted to share what Ms. Hammond does regarding her expectations in her classroom and how she reinforces that. Okay, she to encourage the kids to participate. If they are actively involved in her classroom, they answer questions, they volunteer in some way, she gives them a ticket. And that goes into a drawing, and on Friday she picks 5 tickets, and those kids get to pick something from her treasure chest. I think there's candy in there. And so that's one incentive that she does. She also has the West Point Stars bulletin board. And if the kids get a 100% on an assessment, the first time that they score that 100%, or if they're the highest, if it's not 100% that they earn, say it's a 99%, that's the highest score in that class, they get a star put up on her board, a big star. And that remains up there, and they could add little stars if they get additional 100%, or if they're the highest percent in the class.
Just add one thing about when I started doing the star board, I was told by a lot of teachers that middle schoolers weren't going to be into that because they're too old, they're more mature, that was too elementary. And I will tell you, I've done it for several years in a row, and my students love having their name up on the board. They love the time that I take when I go over and I make their little star on their big star. I've had students, if we have parent conferences in other teachers' classrooms, they will ask if they can bring their parent to my room to see their star on their star board, on the star wall. So it really, in my experience, they really do like it, and they respond positively to it. And STAR stands for students taking academic responsibility.
Incentives.
Oh, I have a skull full of candy, and I keep it up on top. I don't just give it out willy-nilly, because it's expensive. But, the Pirate Bucks help keep my costs down, but they really like candy and chips too. So, if somebody does something exceptional or something like that, I'll take it to them.
Cool.
How, it doesn't have to always be something that comes out of your pocket, like money and spending on candy and stuff. The kids respond well to special privileges too, like sitting in a rolly chair, or getting to listen to music when nobody else can while you're working on something. Things like that don't cost money, but they still like them.
And I've bribed kids to come to school for a long time, and I can't tell you how many years I've been told, why do you do that when this is something they're supposed to do? How do they know they're supposed to do that? Who's teaching them that at home? Probably for most of our kids, nobody. So they don't have that internal, I need to go to school, I need to do well kind of a thing. But I want to ask you, how many of you would come to school and do your job with no paycheck? Because you're supposed to do that. You're an adult, you're supposed to have a job. Are you going to come to work and not get paid? Do you want to work in an environment where you don't have somebody say, great job, you did wonderful? So even though it sounds like it's elementary kind of stuff, like Teresa said, what these kids really respond to with me rewarding kids for coming to school, they don't come now to see me every week because of the reward. I've made a bond with them, I've made a relationship with them, somebody that cares. And those are the kind of things you're building with those students, the relationship, which again, because we're Title I, a lot of our kids don't know how to make relationships.
So we're starting first with the reward system ideas, which the first one are the gold coins. Who has given these out this year? Okay, excellent. So These, when we give them to the kids, are supposed to be a big deal. As it says on here, every teacher once a week should be giving them out. We can get them from the CBE student in the office. They get the coin. When they receive it, it's important for us to explain why they got it. And then they can take it to the office right away if they can. That's an important thing really for it to be immediate feedback for them. Not just you did your test and you got a 95 on your test. This is something bigger. Some examples that I have for you. I was coming to the media center one time earlier in the year, and one of the cafeteria ladies was coming out with her cart, and you could see that she was struggling. One of my boys noticed that on his own. We were already almost like past the walkway. He runs back, opens the door, holds it for her to come all the way out. And he's like, "Did you see what I did?" And I'm like, "Yes, I did. And you know what? I think you earned a gold point for that." And he was so excited because that is something that not all kids notice things like that. Not all adults notice things like that. But another one, picking up trash. If you see a student that on their own just notices that there's trash, the commons area some mornings is like, so I've noticed kids that will just start picking it up on their own. That would be another warranting for a gold coin. So they get these, and if you've never checked out the board in the front office, which a lot of you guys I'm sure have, it is filled and it has the different rows. So once a row is filled up, that's when they draw those names. And they get some kind of a prize. The prizes are a big deal. That's why the gold coin should be something pretty big, because a whole yearbook is like, how much?
$35.
$35. So kind of try to think about when you're going to give a pirate buck or you're going to give a gold coin, does it warrant, a $35 yearbook, because this is something pretty big and important. Here's this little handy dandy bag. I don't know, my sister got it for my kids like years ago and they weren't using them anymore, so I use this. I keep pirate bucks in here. A lot of times it's like attached to my wrist depending on the day and my mood, but I'll walk around and pull these out and give them to the kids. We can give an unlimited amount of, we get an unlimited amount of tickets to give out. Students are not supposed to receive more than 5. What I feel like is really important with these is not to just give it to them, but that you have to talk to them, even if it's quickly, and explain, why I'm giving it to you. Thank you for, being on task. I tried to do it a little bit when I was handing out the pirate bucks. Just letting them understand why they're receiving it. Are you the one that mentioned also about giving it to them when they first come in?
Yes.
Okay, because I noticed that too, because the kids love to, as we all know, because we all are middle school teachers, love to come in and try to chit chat with their friend, even though they all know they have work to do when they first come in. We all do this. We all have our work that they start the day with. Something's on the board, something's on the overhead, and we still have those kids that want to just chit-chat over here with their friend, whatever. So when you realize that they're doing that, if you do start handing out the bucks, you will start to notice it. You'll see, and they're like, they start realizing without even having to make a big deal about it and say it. You can do it silently and just start like this, and then they're like, and you don't have to make like a verbal, big, drawn-out thing about it. I also do team points on my board. The one thing with this is hard to keep up with. I really try to be consistent with it. I'm not perfect at it, so it depends on the day, how it's going, things that I'm doing in the classroom, but I do try really hard to be consistent. I made up, it's called Do Your Part, and my planning for this was based off of the issues that I had in my classroom when I taught 7th grade my first year here. I went home that summer and I was like, okay, what can I do to really try to help manage this behavior and focus on certain things that the students were doing or not doing to try to help improve with classroom management. So it's do your part, and each letter stood for something. The P was participation, is participation. A is academic talk, R is respect, and T is technology. Each of these letters stand for obviously a broad area, but these were the areas that I was having the most trouble with students. So they get 5 points as a class in each area, 20 points per day, if they do well in these areas. So for example, if I have students that have their phone out, and I've asked them not to, they may not get their technology points for that day because they were not appropriately using technology. Okay, respect can be anything. If they're talking when you're trying to do a lesson, that doesn't happen to any of us, I'm sure. So that's respect. Academic talk, are they talking about what they did this weekend at their table, or are they talking about their work that they're supposed to be and engaged in their learning? And participation, are they participating as a whole as a class, or do you have the same 1 and 2 people who are raising their hand to make a negative call, make a positive call? It only takes another couple minutes to do that. So, and I end with that. Have a great night, but we're not done.
We have one more chunk we want to present to you, and I do want to add before we move on to it that the positive call system, just like a ticket system, a positive call can be added to your system as a reward they can earn. I knew a teacher that just had a section of the board and the kids could earn their way onto, and the kids knew what they had to do to earn their way into the positive call list. So just like candy and any other tangibles, that's something else that you just add to what you're already doing.
She dares
What I
you.
like to do is, I usually don't mention if I'm calling home roll. I mean, that way, you know, it's not like this, well, I'm gonna call if you don't do what you do, and then I either do a positive or if I have to do a call for behavior, whatever the case is. But to emphasize what she was just saying, it's really important to follow up, at least I've seen at least anyway. If you do have that negative call, that call for behavior, whatever it is, to follow up a couple of days later, there's actually improved behavior, and it works well.
A lot of different ways to use it, but it seems always results in a positive.
Let's do a whole lot more. And one of the slides that was in there that's not in there, that I think is really a critical one, is it was a picture of an iceberg. And what we're doing with our behavior mod and what we do with the kids every day, pretty much is above the water. Above the, we're doing the superficial things. Some of us get very much into the kids' lives, because you form that relationship that's so critical, but so much of like our truants. What's really the problem is below the water. The parts that we don't see. What's going on in their home. And again, because we're a Title I school, this year, I don't know about you guys, but for me this year, the homelessness, the domestic violence situations that I've been dealing with this year have been phenomenal. Just so many coming out. People being evicted on the day, I don't know where to go. I have no money. I don't have any family. What do I do? I don't know. As many relationships as we can build is better, because then sometimes, like who was saying, they start breaking down and saying, this is what's going on in my life. I know the situation Mr. Hernandez is talking about. I know what kind of conditions are left behind because dad's being deported. So there's a lot of things that we're working with. With my truant kids, most of them just don't wake up and say, I don't feel like going to school today. A lot of the ones I'm working with are those below the water kids. They're the ones that are saying, I was at jail till 2 o'clock in the morning visiting somebody, or my mom got arrested last night, or my dad, I watched my dad and my mom had a parent call me already this week. They had to go out the back window to get away. So those are the kinds of things we're dealing with our kids.